Hi, Wade Johnson. I'm back. Back for the rest of this G7 blues video demonstration. All right, before I actually do that, I would like to talk about the third stave of our chart, the 12-bar blues. What I like to think about when I'm playing is playing through a chord scale, creating an environment, and then when you change chords, a lot of times, in modal playing especially, a lot of times it's the same notes, even though you're changing chords. And even if they're not the same chord scales, a lot of times the simplicity of them, it just gets boring after a while, so it's nice to be able to add tension. So you get tension and release. And a really easy way of doing that, after you get this concept, is to alter a few notes as you come to the end of a phrase before the chord changes, and then it releases into the new chord. And this is using a diminished arpeggio. Diminished chords it's a symmetrical scale, and so it's different than other scales. It's every 3 frets or a minor third. That's the interval, minor third. So if you have 12 frets, we only have 12 notes. So in every 3 frets are an arpeggio for a diminished chord. And then it repeats. So each chord is built up of those 4 notes. So every 3 frets, the notes are the same chord. So there are only 3 diminished chords that go 4 times. So let me demonstrate. I've sent all the stuff with you, so you just have to read about this. But so there's a diminished chord. That's the same diminished chord, the same notes, but they're just inverted. The same diminished chord, but again inverted. The same notes. So these are all G diminished, they're all B flat diminished, they're all C sharp or D flat diminished, and they're all E diminished. And then it repeats G. All right, so that means you can play these diminished arpeggios in 4 different places for the same chord. So here's the way I like to look at it. Let's look at our G7. We'll start our arpeggio on the 7th, which is the 4th string, and we're on 3rd fret here. And it's to build a diminished chord, diminished 7th. It's a 7. That's the 7 of G. Flat 9. Which is an A sharp, I'm sorry, G sharp or A flat, and then we have the 3rd, which is a B, and then we have the 5th. So that's basically an arpeggio for diminished chord. If you could just stretch that out linearly and just look at it, it would just be every 3 frets. So if you can name the notes of a chord, like your G7, if you can, not necessarily have to name them, but you can picture them, the shape of the chord, and realize that this, all right, so we start on that 4th string for the G7, right? All right, now for the C7, the C9th, the arpeggio starts on the 3rd. Now, if I was to play that on the G7, this is the 7th here. The 3rd for the B is up here. So the arpeggio on a 6-string root chord starts on the 7th, which is the 4th string. And the arpeggio for a 5th string chord starts on the 3rd, which is the fourth string also. This is going back to the guide tones that we talked about. Yeah, so that's the reversal of that between a 5 and a 6 string chord. Okay, so now let's look at this G7 arpeggio. I can do any of those. So the great thing is that you have, no matter where you're playing a chord, after you learn this system, you can find a diminished chord anywhere within a couple of frets of wherever you're playing. Yeah. Or if you want this one, or this one, because there's only those three. Those three repeat all over the neck. All right, I think point made. So I'm going to play this loop that I laid down, just simple little blues pattern. I added a couple of bass notes and textures here and there while I looped it, but these are the chords that I sent you. And if you'll notice on the bottom, that's where I did the little, the third stave. That's where I did the example of those little arpeggiations. So another thing to keep in mind is, like for the G7, when you build an arpeggio, diminished arpeggio from it, the actual name of the arpeggio is a half step above. So the notes that we just built from this dominant seventh of the G7, it's actually an A flat diminished, and the C7 that would be a D flat. But you don't really have to worry about that too much. If you see it on the page, you might get a little confused. But I'm trying to get you into just building an arpeggio from a particular chord. Not if you think of this as an A flat diminished while you're playing G7, it's going to screw you up, guaranteed. All right, so I am going to play this finally. I'm going to play simple minor pentatonic. I'm going to play a blues scale. I'm going to do some guide tone line things. I'm going to play Mixolydian chord scales. I am going to play altered chord scale in a couple of places. The D7 turnaround, for the more complicated of the scales, you can actually play a full altered chord scale or diminished. Diminished chord is half of an altered scale, actually. And I'll play like a full altered chord scale for that. That is also in the paperwork, all of those chord scale forms. All right, so I'm going to try and do a little bit of everything, and let's get this under the way. It starts right in on 1, and I can't remember what tempo I did it, but I'll start. I'm going to talk while I play so you know what I'm doing. I think I am. Blues scale. Just pentatonic all the way. diminished thing now, all right? Here comes a diminished now. Diminished. Diminished. Been a little distortion here. Just minor pentatonic. Just a little chromatic out of the key thing. If you target a really strong note, then you can kind of play chromatically to it. And then it'll sound like you know what you're doing. Now here's a full altered scale on this E. That's a mixolydian. Here's a full altered. Something like that. Anyhow, have a lot of fun with this. Email if you have any questions. It's a huge lesson, but if you heed a lot of the stuff in there, it will grow and grow and grow and grow, and you can apply any one of these concepts to a lot of other tunes. Okay, have a great time, and thanks again. See you soon.